And we are live in Facebook world and on YouTube. Hi, everybody. I am so excited about today's conversation. I just look at the screen and smile. This is my very best friend in the world. And there's such a story that this woman brings to the table that I knew this group could get benefit from for so many reasons, and I'll touch on those during the conversation. But I want to dive right in with this amazing human, and this is my friend Trish Schallenberger, who is the founder and CEO of a charity that we're going to talk about here today, but not just to talk about the charity, but to talk about the things about it that make it unique, and I think might be really helpful to folks listening. So without further ado, Trish, welcome to the Snack and Learn in Profit Concierge.
Thank you. Thank you so much. So I think we should share how we met.
That's probably true. Okay, so how old is Catherine?
Exactly. She's 14.
Holy cow. Okay, so Trish moved here 14 years ago, right in the same area that I live. She doesn't live here anymore, but she moved into the area that I live. And my daughter and her oldest child of 4 were in the same Girl Scout troop. And there was a Girl Scout dinner one night at a local restaurant. And I saw Trish come in, followed by 3 kids walking, and she had one baby. Baby. How old was Catherine? Yeah. So I have one baby in her arms, and she was still being the great Girl Scout mom. We were chatting, having a conversation. We talked about American Idol. She knew everything about it. I'd been watching American Idol. I knew everything about it. Great conversation. And then I looked at Catherine in her arms and said, "Hey, how old's your baby?" And she looked down at the baby and looked up at me and went, "I don't know." And I knew right then this was going to be a friend for life. She could tell me anything in the world about American Idol. No idea how old her 4th kid was. That's what having 4 kids under how old? Under 8.
That's the year Carrie Underwood won, by the way. And thank you for not spewing your Diet Coke over her.
It was close. I was almost ready to spit that drink out. That is for sure. But that actually is part of your story, right? So you're running a household. And I've always talked to Trish about this. Running a household is the worst CEO job in the world. Okay, first of all, you've got to cover all the bases. You've got to be the CFO, the operations person, the scheduler, the artist, the creator, the transportation, you name it. You got to cover all the bases. 4 kids under 8 years old, and that is a full-time plus job, and you don't get to sleep at night, because I'm imagining with 4 kids, somebody's awake almost every night of the week with a problem.
At that point, yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. So during all this chaos, or a couple of years later, tell me the story about what happened to you on your business trip. Says, yes, Trish is also a businesswoman who has a Mary Kay business. So tell me about your business trip and what happened that day.
Okay. So Catherine was a year at that point. So I knew she did grow. She got older. And I was in Dallas, Texas, trying to come home. So I had been there on a business trip, like you said. And it was August 1st, 2007. And I remember the day as if it was yesterday. And there were storms going through the area. In fact, the rain was and the wind was going this way.
Those Dallas storms are terrible.
Well, I had never seen it. I've been going to Dallas for 14 years at that point and had never seen this.
Mm-hmm.
So all the flights are being delayed, of course. And so they're getting pushed back and pushed back and pushed back. And there were a couple dozen people trying to go stand by on my flight. And they asked if I would be willing to stay another night and go home the next day. And I did contemplate it because we've already talked about the 4 children. But I knew I needed to go home. I needed to get back to my husband and relieve him. And that was not an option. So I declined. And then for some reason during that week, I had changed my seat in the on the airplane, and I had moved a little bit closer to the front. Never done that before, never done it since, but something made me change my seat. And
And you
so,
don't remember anything about, like, were you just sitting there and one day and said, I think I'll just change my seat, or do you really just not recall what drove that?
so you know how you have to do your boarding pass ahead of time?
Yes.
So I had done it the night before, and I thought, let me just see if there's any closer seats to the front
That's
of the
when you
airplane.
changed it. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So yeah. So then I changed that. So at the end of the day, the flight's about 3.5 hours late, and we board the flight, and there's one empty seat on this overbooked flight. And I thought that was so odd, and I didn't understand. But that became a crucial point or piece of the story, rather.
Where was that one unfilled seat on the
So
plane?
I was on the window, the middle seat was empty, and next to me was this young man who reminded me very much of Opie from the Andy
Don't miss
Griffith
this, folks.
Show.
That entire plane is full with people in the airport still who had given up their flights, and there was
Yes.
an empty seat between Trish and a young man who reminded you of Opie from Andy Griffith.
Correct. Yeah. He was really, fair skin, had freckles, really short hair. He was adorable, and he certainly could have been our son. And because that seat was empty, we put our stuff in the middle, and I began to talk to him. And I noticed immediately that his hands were a mess. So the tops of them were sunburned, and the bottoms had these like quarter-size whelps on them. And it was so incredibly painful to look at, actually, much less to endure. And so I got him hand cream.
Was that all from sunburn, Trish, or was that like wear and tear from
So
work?
so what I learned was that he was from Alabama. He was going to school on an ROTC scholarship at Auburn University, and he had been pulled. And so they were at Fort Hood in Texas training, trying to get acclimated to the heat because he was on his way to Iraq.
Uh-huh. Okay.
So Dallas in July, August, it's hot, but not compared to where he was going. And so, I got him hand cream, and it's just like a little tube, but he used the whole thing up before we ever got back to Philadelphia.
And did he feel the relief from it a little bit?
He did, and he kept saying, thank you. It was soothing to him because they were just so raw. And because that middle seat was empty, we had the opportunity to talk, and we did. And in hindsight, I peppered him with questions. And the good old Southern military raised Baptist young man answered my questions.
Yeah.
And, he shared that he was as prepared as he thought he could be, being third generation military. Now, mind you, he's 18. But he felt that he was prepared. He knew the gig as much as he could know.
Got it.
And he shared with me, he said, I'm a Christian. He said, I'm not afraid of dying. That's not my fear. He said, but my biggest fear is being sunburned. He said, he shows me his hands. I can't handle Texas.
Huh.
Remember how fair Opie was?
Yep.
This is Mark. And he said, how am I going to handle? He said, I'm on my way to Iraq, which 100 degrees is nothing. So I said to him, well, I'll take care of you. I'll send you stuff to take care of your hands and your skin. Like, that was a no-brainer.
Mm-hmm.
And he said to me, he said, I appreciate that. He said, but I can't accept something from you, knowing that not everyone would get a mail call. That's what he understood by being a third generation person in the military.
Is that he wouldn't take something that clearly would alleviate one of his biggest fears because everybody in the unit couldn't have one.
Correct.
Yeah. Okay.
So I said, I'll send one to your whole unit. How many's in your unit?
Oh, you did it in that order, huh?
Immediately.
You said you'd do it before you asked the how many.
Yes. And then he said 177. And I thought, can I say what I thought?
Yeah, go ahead. Absolutely. You're on
I'm
my
like,
channel now.
oh shit. Like, what have I done? But I said, Mark, I really have no idea how I'm going to accomplish this, but you can count on me.
Okay, critical note here, folks. And this is a big part of Trish's messaging. That was a promise she made there on that plane. And we'll circle back to that. But that is so key. She had promised to do it. Then she found out how hard it was to do. And she stuck with the fact that she'd already promised. So keep going. I want to circle back to that. That's such a big part of the story to me.
So I remember when we left the flight, you know, we left the plane, got into the airport, and he went one way and I went to the next other way. And I said, Mark, it's a promise. You know, you can count on me. And I did share, I don't know how, but you can count on me. And so Thanksgiving Day,
I'm gonna stop you because there's another part of the story I love here. He told you later on that he went and told his buddies about the promise you'd made him. What happened when he did that?
Yeah, so he was not in Army fatigues. He was in street clothes, but there certainly were a lot of people I noticed afterwards that were gathering that were in those outfits.
Yeah.
Uniform.
Gotcha. Those outfits. Dress for that thing.
Exactly. And he said he got off, you know, he shared with them. He said, I met this lady on an airplane and she's going to send us care packages. And they laughed at him because they thought, yeah, right. Some woman that you met on an airplane is going to send you care packages. And they thought he was just a young, naive kid.
Yep. Cool. Now you can go on, but that's another really important piece.
Thank you.
Told basically that this didn't really happen. Get over yourself, kid.
But he trusted me. And he trusted that I would do what I said I would do. And so Thanksgiving Day, 2007, he emails me from Iraq, which is also amazing in itself, right?
All by itself, yeah.
Yes. And he said, today is the best day. He said, I got to be Santa Claus. And he said, and I handed it out to every single person in my unit. And he said, you have to know that there are grown men crying. He said, because they've never received anything. Just he had said. There's people that haven't gotten that mail call. And then they get one from you. And he said, and those guys that were laughing at me, he said, they aren't laughing anymore. And that was
what chokes me up, that story.
It's such a valuable lesson because I think, and I'm guilty of this too, before this, of saying we're going to do something with great intention and great faith that we're going to do that. And then something happens and then we don't. And what this taught me is we never know who's on the other end of that that's holding on to our words. So
true. So true. And not only that, this taught 170 other people that same lesson. Here is somebody who kept their promise. So now right out of the gate, 170 people recognizing how important it is to keep that promise. And the thing that I love about this is you talk about it like dominoes a lot. And, you know, it started with the rain in Dallas and changing your seat and the empty seat, and his hands happened to be bad and he happened to mention, and I mean, you can just see these dominoes falling and one hitting the other. And, you know, 14 years later, 13 years later, the number of dominoes is countless at this point, because the thing that I kind of picture whenever you tell that is that each one of those dominoes is hitting multiple dominoes that we don't even hear about or know about. Because every now and then you'll hear a story circle back about the impact it's had. So let's go on from there. So you did the 170. You learned for the first time that there are deployed military people who never get a mail call. What did that drive?
So when he said that to me on the flight, my image went to Santa Claus. So what if, because the children were, 8 to 1.
Yeah.
So I thought, what if Santa Claus came and brought 2 gifts to our 4 children? Then what? So do they share? Does someone not get one? Someone's just completely left out? And I'll admit to you that, part of me and I'm really actually okay with this, is a little naive. I think that everyone has someone out there that's rooting them on,
Got it.
that has their back, that's there when they need somebody.
Mhm.
And so I learned that that's not the case.
Yeah.
And so actually years later, actually it was actually last year, Mark shared with me the guy. He said, yeah, this older guy. Well, the older guy was 60. But when you're
All right, we'll talk to him about that later. But
well, that I did say to him, that's another conversation. But his wife had died. He didn't have any children, and there was no one there that was sending him anything.
wow,
And he was the one that had the tears coming down.
wow.
And so it fueled the fire.
Mhm.
And then the commander of Mark's unit, David Van Horn, he actually emailed me as well. And he said, thank you for covering my whole, what did he call it? Shop.
Huh.
My whole shop. You took care of every single man and woman in my unit. Something that I'm trying to do on my end, but you did it on your end in a different way. And he said, and I cannot thank you enough for that.
Hmm.
And so that was another domino. And
Yeah.
so I thought, my goodness, we just have to do it again.
Mm-hmm.
And so we sent different stuff to his unit. And then when that unit came back, what I learned is that when they leave from one spot, they come back to that spot. They don't come back to their home first, but they come from wherever they left from, which was in Fort Dix.
Which was nearby where you lived.
Right, which is where another, like Godwink, right? All these people are from Alabama. And so that's when we took Lindsay, your daughter.
Yep.
And we were the only civilians there. And this group of people were standing in line to thank us for sending them care packages, as opposed to us standing in line thanking them for the year that they've just spent away from their family.
Mm-hmm. Like I said, the story just continues to give me chills, because that's how they could not wait to get up to you, hug you, and say thank you.
Yes.
And that like you just became that unit's mom.
Right.
In that instant, and it made a difference on their deployment. So you've had this thing happen now. You've recognized how valuable it is. What do you do next? Like, you could have just gone, hey, good, took care of Mark's unit. I'm going to go back to my family and my work. And that is not at all what happened.
But that's what I thought was going to happen. Because
as you left Fort Dix.
So they left Fort Dix, and then they invited me to come to Alabama. So, and by the way, moonshine is not really great.
I think we had that at like your 40th birthday, your 50th birthday.
Well, that was good. That had apple pie.
Okay. You're talking was hardcore moonshine.
Out of the still. But when you're in Alabama, you got to try it. Anyway, that's a whole side note. So I did go to Alabama, and I spent a weekend with Mark's parents.
Wow.
Now think about that. When I was driving there, I thought, wait a minute, what am I doing? Like, are they going to kill me? Like,
they don't know me. Yep.
But it was just a blind faith thing.
Yep.
And so I went, and at their decommissioning ceremony, David Van Horn, the captain, actually presented me with this huge eagle statue that was they had to be voted on, and it was given to a citizen for their support of their unit.
Wow.
And evidently there was it was like a heated debate on giving this out, but he trumped it and said she needs to be recognized in this way. And I only share that because that just tells me how much that mattered to him.
Well, he basically barked up his chain of command to say, we need to do this. It was the people above him who were like, maybe it's not, we don't. Do you have that there in your office?
So everything is a story in this story.
True.
So it was massive and it was heavy. And I asked him if he could ship it to me. And he did, and it got lost.
Oh no, for real?
For real.
I don't remember that.
And I never got it.
I did not. I didn't remember that.
Yeah,
Wow.
and I was really sad, actually,
Yeah.
because I wanted to share that with all the people that made it happen, for one. You know, I'm just
Yep.
a mouthpiece, and
Yep.
I'll tell you, with COVID, I've come to really appreciate our volunteers because we can
Well,
get
that is the
together.
other half of this story, right?
Right, right. So this is funny. So Pam, so 10 years after that date, this box shows up on our doorstep, and it's from David Van Horn.
Wow.
And he couldn't get that other statue, so to speak, but that's when he sent the Minuteman statue
Oh, that's it.
with
Okay.
a note that
Yeah.
says, this has been weighing on my mind for 10 years now. You deserve this. I want you to have this. I don't want you to think that I've forgotten.
Wow.
And so it kind of meant even more because
Something that stuck with a commanding officer for 10 years.
right.
And think about what else he went through over 10 years.
Absolutely.
That's amazing. I did not realize that I now that you've said it, I remember it, but it's my 58-year-old brain going, no, I didn't know that. But now I remember that. And that is so cool. So how did you get like from there to A Soldier's Hand this many years later, and how many packages in total have been sent?
So you mentioned the dominoes, and that's exactly what it was. So then after that, someone called and said, I don't know how I got your number, but I hear you're the lady that sends care packages. Can you take care of this unit? Sure.
Mm-hmm.
Glenn Fioricala re-enlisted from Mark's unit, and he said,
Mm-hmm.
do you think you could send it to me and my buddies? And I also have a friend who's a paratrooper. Do you think you could send it to him? And so then the dominoes were going, and I wasn't actively pursuing this. It just sort of came to us.
That, I think, is the key. One of the things I think in this story that's so important, I think that all of us can get something from, is it's paying attention to the things that just happen, even when you're not pursuing. And often when you're not pursuing, the biggest things happen. And that's the key. It just fell in your lap, but your willingness to say, what does this mean? Like taking the step instead of just leaving it there lying on the ground, taking the step onto that rock and going, well, all right, I'll take the next step. I don't know what the one after that's going to be, but what the heck, I have the faith. And regardless of whether you're spiritual with the universe or with God or with Muhammad, or you name what your thing is, something is guiding this. There is no doubt in my mind. And, you and I are both of the faith that believe this is God putting those stepping stones there. And so this has been another big part of your message in getting people involved, is there's a whole world of people out there wanting to do things and not having a path to do it. So the things I'd really be interested in kind of drawing out of this is, when you look at the flip side of it, what are you teaching or trying to teach kids? And how are you trying to serve volunteers in this effort as well?
So that's the piece that I guess surprised me, because what we've done is now this is my passion. This is what we do, is we serve units that are deployed overseas. So you asked how many. We're just about 12,000 individually wrapped care packages. And it can't be done without the volunteers. But that just kind of bubbled up and came to be as well.
Mm-hmm.
And what I realize is that people don't necessarily want to start something. Heck, I didn't want to start something.
You didn't intend to start something.
But people want to do something that they feel is of value and that they can make a difference in. Yeah. And so it doesn't matter their age. We work with students of all ages, college students. We work with seniors. We work with an autism group. Mm-hmm. Everyone can play a part and make a difference, and it really does take all of that in order to get it done. Yep,
that's exactly right. That's the thing I love about this, is that when I say you recognize the stones, as each of these things came into your life, You're like, oh yeah, we can do this. We can use this. And there are tons of ways people can volunteer. Like if somebody has trouble with dexterity, doing there's my puppy piping in because I'm sure she's helped a few times too. But I'll go on mute so you can tell people how the different volunteers, what all the different things are people can do.
Okay, sure. So I'll just start with what goes in a care package. So we have partnered with a company called Badger Balm. It's a private company in New Hampshire, privately owned company in New Hampshire. So it's made in the USA. And we send a hand balm because that's where it started with. A lip balm with an SPF. Do you know that your lips actually can burn? And
I do now, but only because my best friend is Trish SHALLENBERGER.
And then an SPF. So those are the 3 products. And then we include a star. So I don't know if you can see this.
Yep.
So this is a star, and what it says on the back, it says, I'm a part of our American flag. I've flown over home in the USA, but I can no longer fly. The sun and wind have caused me to come tattered and torn. Please carry me as a reminder you're not forgotten. So this goes in every single care package. So we have people that are cutting out stars and assembling them.
So, and again, another domino, but really important. Tell me about that star.
How that came to be. So I was at a craft show. So I think what we have to do is plant seeds of what it is that we're doing. And then my faith releases that, and then something good will come from it. Mm-hmm. I don't know what, but something good will come from it. So I'm at this craft show, and this woman came up to me and she said, I think you need to be a star maker. And I'm like, a star maker? I didn't know what it was. Well, her mother was a Gold Star mom.
Which is?
So, what's that?
What's a Gold Star mom for folks who might not know?
So she lost a child in war. And she partnered with this woman, her name, Esther Wolfer. Her son was killed in action on 4/6/08. And so she created, actually, I don't know that she created this, but she started doing this to keep his memory alive, but to also to honor those that have served or are serving.
Yep.
And so she said, I think you need to do this. And I'm like, okay. So I called, and then this is what got added into our care packages. Mm-hmm. So the beginning didn't start that way, but that is the way now.
Yeah.
And what the recipients tell me is that they'll put it in their hand, they'll put it in their pocket. It's something tactile, it's small. Mm-hmm. They'll tape it to the inside of their helmet. It's just a small token to know that you're not forgotten.
Yeah. And that you're part of something bigger. And the thing I love about these too, we'll often go to local town events, or in your case now, Penn State, larger events, and have a booth and give people the opportunity to sign up as volunteers or tell us of troops that they want us to serve. And both of those things are equal sides of the ledger for us. We need to find volunteers and collect money, but we also need to find troops to deploy to. We always, and again, this is another thing God's kind of done for us. He's always keep the ledger and the needs balanced for us. And giving these things to veterans, because you can actually give them to anybody who's served. And you can just see it in their eyes how much it means. Number one, that they're getting this, but more that you're putting it in the hands of active duty soldiers at the same time, soldiers, sailors, any of the above. So that's what I really love about that star. But go ahead. So that's what's in the package.
So I actually keep them in my car.
So perfect.
It's when you buy a new car and then you're driving around and all you can see is the new car that you just purchased.
Yep.
That's how I am with veterans. So I can see bumper stickers. I can see, some clothing that may mark that. I can also tell you every flag in State College that needs to be retired and given to me.
I love it.
So that we can keep them going.
Yeah.
The other piece that goes in is a handwritten card. And when we sent Mark's first unit, we didn't stick them in the care packages like we do now. We actually put them all, as many letters that we had, put them on top of the boxes. And he shared with me that he wallpapered his room. I don't think it's called a room either, but he wallpapered it. So when people were having a bad day, they would come in and they would read these letters.
Wow.
And, it always brightened their day. It connected them back to what in the world are they doing in
Hmm.
these godforsaken countries. It was priceless.
Yeah, it's eye-opening because we don't go through the emotions of what it must be like to be away from home in a foreign country, not in control of what's happening to you, responding to commands and where you're staying. And what that feels like is not something we can really get into, but these stories help me understand it and feel it a little more and appreciate it even more. And then and the other people that appreciate this a lot is the families of these deployed soldiers. I can't even say they're not kids. They range in age from 18 to probably 65, 70. I don't even know if there's a mandatory retirement, but that piece of it is so important. And these cards that you're talking about, some of them are totally illegible because they're drawn by a preschooler, but that even carried meaning with it. So, and some people write, some folks will write really long, detailed letters. That was something that really struck me. We often have a letter writing table when we go out and do events. And I remember one lady sitting down and she was there for a good 20 minutes and wrote what ended up being a 2 or 3 page letter. And we didn't read it. It wasn't our place to read it, but we folded it up and put it in a card, and somebody got that very thoughtful letter. So yeah, that's the other cool piece. So that's the thing I like is you're energizing the community back home. They're getting involved with something they can put their hands on. It's now we do this in 2 different towns. You juggle basically, Yardley, Pennsylvania and State College, Pennsylvania right now. But then recently with COVID, you actually had somebody who participated. You mailed them all the supplies and they had a packaging party with their COVID pod. So it's like even charities have to pivot. And like,
yes.
Holy cow. And then the other thing you did that I loved was you called me one day and said, hey, we can't send to the military right now. They're not accepting packages because of COVID. So until we can again, how about we pick frontline workers and pick a hospital and cover all the frontline staff in a hospital? I'm like, that's brilliant. So I don't know, how many deliveries did we get to a hospital?
We did about 1,200 to
there you go.
hospitals in California, Virginia, New Jersey, Pennsylvania.
Mm-hmm. And this goes back to the thing I had mentioned a while ago for everybody. Like with COVID, it was kind of like an earthquake. And the waterfall that was kind of everything that we did and how we made money and how we got things out into the world like a soldier's hands, all of a sudden that waterfall dried up. But if we looked a little bit to the left, it didn't dry up. It just shifted it over a little bit. And just like all of us in this group and businesses kind of had to go, okay, how do I tap into that now? You did the same thing with a soldier's hands. Plenty of other, not-for-profits have done that, but a lot haven't. So no matter what your business is, there is always a way if you just think a little bit differently about what and how you do what you do. And that's the other thing I kind of love about the story is that you didn't just stop and say, hey, you had just before COVID, who was it that what was the number of packages you sent to a unit and where was it right before COVID?
So let me just back up just a tad. All of the dominoes would drop and lead to one and lead to the other and lead to the other. And so when we finally decided to become a nonprofit, well, actually, so remember the guy that you worked with, Reggie?
Yeah, Reggie.
Reggie. So Reggie puts us in contact with a command major sergeant something. I didn't even know how to
the big wig.
Yeah, I didn't know how to. I said, what do I say to you? And he said, how about Tom? And I'm like, okay.
Okay. Hey, your turn. Hi, Lily.
Goodness. So he said, I do have a unit. He said, I said, okay. And I got smart and I said, well, how many? And he said, with this real Southern accent, oh, honey, you better sit down. There's a big one. I'm like, okay. So I sat down and it was 800. It was a lot. So I don't know if you remember, Pam, but we're we're sitting at our kitchen table and we're sitting across, and you said, I think we should name this. This is like
It's a
we're
thing.
not a nonprofit, but this is a big project. We probably should have a name for it. I said, okay. So you said, how about a soldier's hands? It started with Mark's hands, and I'm like, great. Okay. So then we keep working. And that's how we came up with the name of Soldier's Hands.
That is so true. That is so true.
But by doing the 800, that was the pivot point that for me, I really thought that was it. I couldn't think any bigger. I didn't know that I even wanted to do any bigger. But something switched in the middle of that. And I realized that, yes, that's a lot, but that's nothing in the scheme of things. So that's when we became a 501c3. So then that same woman that told me I needed to be a star maker reached out to me, and she said, the USS Fitzgerald had a accident. Can you send to them?
I remember that accident. Yep.
Right. We did. And then the Reagan. So then we received a letter from the Rear Admiral of the 7th Fleet, acknowledging and thanking us for what we did. And then I saw on the news where that same Rear Admiral was on the news talking about the Reagan. The Reagan had an accident. And I said to my husband, that's our next unit. And he's like, that's big, right?
There are a lot of people on those carriers, Trish.
I said, I'm just telling you, that's the next domino that went. That's the next God wink. That's our next unit. Well, that was 3,224.
And what was our biggest challenge?
Completely. And it took a long time, but we did not quit.
And that's exactly. We didn't quit. And in that challenge was one of the biggest pivots we've made in the business internally from an operational standpoint that has made us even more able to serve larger and larger groups for less money.
Exactly.
With the same quality stuff.
Exactly.
So that nightmare and having stuck through that that challenge, because there were times it felt like a nightmare. We're like, I'm going to just have to hand wrap one package a day for the next 7 years. And I remember it's like, we will get this. And you did not, you were like a dog with a bone. This was going to happen, period. And during that process, like sometimes when we go into those, and I'm not going to call it dark time because it wasn't dark by any stretch, but it was challenging. Out of that came this, basically the fuel to propel us forward even further for more people after that. And that to me was just such a powerful acknowledgement of what you were doing.
Well, and it goes back to what a lady, Dawn Nixon, who I went to church with, was friends with the commander's wife on the Reagan. What are the odds of that? So we're communicating directly with her, and I committed to her. So it was like Mark all over again, but how many times more? But I had made that commitment, and there was no way that we couldn't do it. Yeah. And in fact, on a recent post in Facebook, it was part of the Lower Makefield site. So a lady responded and said, my grandson received one of your care package on the Reagan.
Yeah. And it just keeps going and going and going. And that is just the power in this story. To me, this story holds, you're going to have to write a book at some point, not because so much to tell this story as how many stories this story tells, or how many sort of motivational, keep moving forward, understand the power of love in what can often be a dark and scary world. One of the things Lorraine said here on her post, and I'll share it here for a minute because I really like it. The world is hungry for stories like this. People are good at heart, and we need to focus more on the positive these days. And Lorraine, God bless you. You're absolutely right. And that to me is they're like 50 peripheral stories that anybody could watch this story and be at some place that you were during this journey. And hopefully out of this conversation today, pick something up, a tip or a trick or how to move forward with something that'll be helpful to them. And then there's one other question I want to ask you. So running a not-for-profit is a massive undertaking. And you certainly have CEO chops because you ran a household. You certainly have other, like you've run your Mary Kay business, so you have business chops. Running a not-for-profit is huge and a whole different thing. What kind of tips do you have for somebody going into something where they go, I don't know how to do this? What would you like? Can you give them 1 or 2 pointers about how they could get started or further what they're doing?
So I realized early on that I don't have to know how to do all this.
Huh.
And quite frankly, I don't want to know. I don't want to, I don't,
Bookkeeping,
that's just
the thing.
I don't know. I don't need to know all the answers. So I have to trust that this is what I'm supposed to be doing. And by all those dominoes continuing to fall, it reinforces that piece. And then I surround myself with people that know what I don't know and that are going to raise my game. And
Okay.
so the board is just that. They fill those gaps that I don't have.
Mm-hmm.
And I think just as a rule of thumb, you hang out with people that you want to be like and that you want them to raise your game.
Mm-hmm. I love it. Leadership lesson, massive in this. Number 1, the humility to say, I don't know it all. Huge. Number 2, be willing to surround yourself by people who know stuff better than you do in some areas and be the visionary. Carry it. A lot of you are business leaders out there. A lot of you have coaching businesses with teams. That's the job, is to be humble enough to understand what you don't know and surround yourself with the people who not only share your vision. That is always key. Alex Sharpton, a good friend of mine, will always say, rule number 1, they got to share your vision. They got to have the passion. But then the second thing is let them shine where they shine. There's no competition about you being the smartest person in the room. You don't need to be the smartest person in the room. Nobody needs to be the smartest person in the room, but together you become that smartest entity that kind of carries it forward. And that to me is just another leadership lesson in everything you've done.
Well, you are a huge part of this. And so when I would not know what the next step was, you were always there, providing some guidance, maybe a push sometimes.
Yeah, here's how my guidance goes, folks. Oh, Trish, there's another thing. Go ahead and take a step. I think it'll hold.
Sometimes
I got your back. But go ahead. You go ahead and take that step.
But you know what? I think everyone needs to have someone that they know has their back.
Yeah.
And that, we talked about that in sending the care packages, making sure everyone within a unit receives that so they know we have their back.
Yep.
Same thing here.
Yeah.
Your
team has your back, you have your team's back, and that all just plays together. This has been a blast for me. I love this conversation. Number 1, because I get to talk to my friend, but number 2, because the more I hear this, and I really, as many times as I've heard the story in all of its pieces, I really wanted to go through it and kind of tear it apart for all of the gold that it holds kind of hidden in there. And I'm going to keep this recording because I honestly think I'm going to make you write a book sometime, because there's just so much in here that is useful, and not just in our times right now in COVID, but the lessons in this are just astronomical. And now we've thank you, Facebook Live group, for giving us the opportunity to make a recording we can get a transcript of, and now have the outline for a book to tell this story. I just thank you so much, Trish, for taking the time. How old are those kids now? Come on,
Why do you do this to me?
Same story.
22, 20, 17, and 14.
There we go. And look, you're still upright. You did it.
I'm still standing.
And one of them is a frontline worker these days. Actually, two of them are frontline workers, because one works in restaurants and one works in hospitals. Both of those are hazardous. So God bless the 2 oldest there that I know what they're doing right now in their careers. So give everybody my love, Trish. This has been a blast. Thanks so much. Everybody, thanks for hanging in there, whether you're watching this live or you watch it on the replay, this is worth it for all the amazing gold around leadership, around positivity, around following your instincts, and around God winks. You guys have a fantastic rest of the week. It's been great talking with you, Trish.
Thank you. I appreciate it, Pam. Thank you.